This podcast is rated S for spoilers. Listener discretion is advised. Don't forget to view our spoiler-free companion video on our Half Past Podcast channel on YouTube. Welcome to the Half Past Podcast. This is episode 41, the movie review of Warcraft. We will also be discussing the Star Trek Beyond trailer. I'm Graham Ricks, and here with me is my friend and co-pilot, Ian Jones.
Much better that time, buddy. All right, we nailed it.
You know, through the miracles of editing, people wouldn't know that I messed up the first time.
Shut up, they do now. Everyone knows that you tanked it now. Suddenly realizing that we have to talk about a trailer.
And we already heard another voice here. It looked like Mark Levy's back here.
Loktar, friends.
Nice.
That's some Warcraft gibberish.
Nice.
I know my Orcish.
Okay, I'm not sure how to answer that. I played Hearthstone. And
yes.
So I was hoping to see some of these cards.
No.
Okay.
They're all in there.
I'll leave it. Yes, I will.
Some of them are, some of them aren't.
Right.
Yeah, we'll get into that when we get into it. I guess we're going to talk about Star Trek Beyond here because I thought we were going to do another one, but we're doing Star Trek. So the first thing I want to say about Star Trek Beyond is that it is a completely different style from the other two. It's you can tell it's a different director, but a lot of people have been complaining about that, and they keep talking about it Star Trek Fast and Furious, which is always a very interesting thing to say because it's not like it's a heist movie. That's what Fast and Furious is now. Although maybe it is. I don't know.
Well,
that would be very interesting. Maybe a Star Trek heist movie.
Maybe that's just because they insist on putting that up.
They do insist on putting it up because Justin Lin's directing this one, and he's the one that's been doing the Fast and Furious movies. So I totally get people's opinion, but it's like the only reason why they say that is because they put it up there. It's not like watching the trailer without that, you would automatically assume Fast and Furious.
No, of course not.
So I just thought that was very interesting. And the other thing I want to say is that to me, looking at the trailer, it looks like they're going back to a lot of the episodes of the original series, which spends a lot of time on a, really crappy set for a planet.
Oh, I'm not sure that's a good thing or not. Okay.
Yeah, but the thing is they are going back to that feel. A lot of people are complaining that they're not in space, but I mean, the original series did not spend a whole lot of time out in space. Well, that was more like Next Generation.
We don't know if that's really the case or not. I mean,
we don't, but it seems that way looking at the trailer.
Yeah.
I don't want to spend my time at or on Earth.
Yes.
Go out there. Your mission's to go where we haven't been before, so go do.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I think it's a good thing to give more of a feel like that in these movies. I think it's okay, but some people are complaining about that. How about you? What do you think, Jones?
Well, I like this newer trailer that we saw for Warcraft much better than the original.
You mean Star Trek?
No, well, yeah, but we just saw this. You guys had it playing for Warcraft.
Oh, you're talking about... I thought you were talking about Warcraft trailer. Oh,
yeah, it was one of the trailers.
Yes, yeah, I got
so
this
So the version that they showed, I thought felt more like Star Trek to me.
Well, to be honest with you about that is I actually, for some weird reason, when I went to go see Warcraft, I got the old trailer.
Oh.
I did not get the second trailer, and I don't know why that happened, but that's what I got for Warcraft.
That's so weird.
Yeah, it doesn't make any sense. I was like astonished. I was like, what? This is the old trailer.
Yeah, it's like
the one that starts with the music coming up and everything. I thought that was very strange, but that is what I got.
I mean, the one thing is that I think it seems like they're working on their version of Kirk for this one, because to me we haven't had a Captain Kirk yet. You know, like they
think so?
No, I don't. I mean, I think he's been close, but I think he hasn't quite been there. And the narrative from this trailer, to me, it seems more like Captain Kirk. You know,
okay,
that's my personal feeling. I think we've been leading up to it because he's been so young, but it feels, I think, like it should, and I hope that it's like that in the movie too.
All right, what about you, Mark? How do you feel about this one?
No, I'm looking forward to it. You still got Scotty helping write the script, and he's a huge Star Trek fan.
Yeah.
So I have faith in the direction he'd want to see. You've got actors who are now reprising these roles for the third time.
Yeah.
So when people say, "Oh, it's just going to be some action movie," like you said, because Fast and the Furious ties, I'm like, he's not writing it, and they still know what they're doing.
Yeah.
I think it looks like a lot of fun. And when people like to point out, well, it just looks like more action than what Star Trek should be, let's break it down. There's been a lot of Star Trek movies to pull apart, and the ones that try and do the really deep thoughts and stay more just thought-provoking than action-oriented, they're not the better movies.
No, they're not the better ones.
They're just not. But the ones that are more like just fun adventures that they go on, those seem to do really well, and that's what I want to see.
Yeah, I mean, they're a drag. You know, I mean, if you look at the next generation ones, although I think I probably liked most of them.
I do too.
I thought in comparison, like First Contact was far better than
that one's really good.
Insurgents. Or,
Insurrection, which is like Insurrection's like one big episode. It's got goofy moments, but it didn't even feel like a movie. It could have just been broken up into a 2-part episode.
Like not worthy of, I think, all the characters that they had built. It just didn't have that snap to it. So I was actually happy that they got away from Jonathan Frakes at that point.
Jonathan Frakes, okay.
Because he was doing those films.
Yeah.
And I think it was time for someone else to step in. But, I don't know. I personally, I really like the reboot. I like that there's more action because I think that it's going to suck in a younger audience. And that's what Star Trek has been missing. So I will say that, why not go ahead and make them fun and make people want to go and see them? It's almost like a Marvel version of Star Trek, and I don't have a problem with it because I would rather see more Star Trek movies or more shows.
Yeah.
And we got that new series coming, I think, as early as next year.
Yeah, I think so.
So, and it's been how long? Like, 10 years since there's been a show on the air?
I think it's longer
than that.
Yeah.
I mean, certainly if you just discard Enterprise, which I don't have a problem with doing.
Nice.
It's been much longer.
I like that show.
I couldn't make it through Star Trek Enterprise. I saw the first few episodes and I was just kind of done.
I think.
So, I don't know.
I think that had it been on Netflix, maybe they could have done everything that they needed, as opposed to UPN,
which is always a weird choice.
That was a kiss of death.
All right. Anybody else have anything about this trailer?
Not me.
Nope. Let's do it.
All right. So let's take a quick break, and then we're going to go ahead and get into the actual movie review here. The realm of Azeroth stands on the brink of war between orcs and humans. Two heroes from each side must decide the fate of their family, their people, and their home. This movie is directed by Duncan Jones. That's right, Duncan Jones. He has been known for the movie Moon and Source Code. Have either one of you seen those?
No.
I have not, but I am familiar with both.
That's unfortunate. I've seen Source Code. I thought it was okay.
Oh.
I didn't see Moon. I hadn't even heard of Moon before, but...
That's the one with Sam Rockwell.
Yes, Sam Rockwell is in that one. So he's starring Travis Fimmel as Anduin Lothar. He was in the TV show The Beast and also Vikings, which has any of you seen that on History Channel?
No.
He's the
Just
lead in that.
in the beginning.
Is he?
Yeah, he's the lead in that, and it's actually I saw the first season. I haven't seen anything past that, but he's pretty good in that. So it's kind of understandable why they chose him. Paula Patton as Garona. She was in Hitch, Deja Vu, and Mission Impossible: Ghost Protocol.
Who was she in Hitch?
She was one of the women in Hitch. She wasn't like a main character.
Oh, gotcha.
My Corona, man. Isn't there that song?
Terrible. You know, I remember you said earlier that you thought they were saying Corona
the entire time. The entire time. Beer.
Which, you know, I thought that too, probably all the way up to halfway through the movie. I thought they were saying Corona, and I'm like, what? Is that true? That doesn't sound right. Is that right? Oh, yeah, I was struggling with some of the names.
I'm struggling now, and I'm looking at them. I kept thinking about limes every time they would talk to her. Plus, she's green, so.
Ben Foster as Medivh. He was in The Punisher, X-Men: Last Stand, and 3:10 to Yuma. Dominic Cooper as Lane Wren. He was in Captain America: The First Avenger. And he was Howard Stark.
Young captains.
Yep. Abraham Lincoln, Vampire Hunter, and Need for Speed. Toby Kebbell as Duratan. He was in Rock and Rolla, Prince of Persia: The Sands of Time, and of course he was in Dawn of the Planet of the Apes. Ben Schnetzer as Khadgar. He was in an episode of Law and Order,
Good.
Happy Town, and The Book Thief, which
wow.
I'm going to go ahead and say right now that I had a problem with this actor the whole time of the movie. So I and it explains it when you see his filmography. I'm like, oh wow, okay. Next up here is Robert Kaczynski as Orgrim. He was in EastEnders, Red Tails, and Pacific Rim. Clancy Brown as Blackhand. He was in Highlander, Shawshank Redemption, and Carnival. Last one here we have is Daniel Wu, who I always like this guy. He shows up in a lot of martial arts movies, and I freaking love this dude. He plays Gul'dan, and he was New Police Story, Tai Chi, Zero, and Hero. Do you remember?
Okay, we saw those movies. Those are a lot of fun. Yes, we watched
those movies.
Okay.
Those are fun movies. I think they're still on Netflix. If anybody wants to watch just a fun, crazy, kung fu movie, watch Tai Chi, Zero, and Hero. He was also in Europa Report, and he's the lead in Into the Badlands. We're all done with the characters here, so let's go ahead and get into the nitty-gritty here after a break. So we're going to take a really quick break, and then we're going to go into the quirks and likes. All right, now we're back with our quirks and likes section. I'm going to do something a little different this time around. I'm going to go ahead and spring this on you guys. But,
wait, what?
I'm going to say one thing about my quirks, and then I'm going to actually have you, Ian, go first, because you're the one who knows the least amount about
interesting.
the lore.
Okay.
Mark, our guest here, knows the most, and I am in between. So we're going to get a very interesting thing here. And,
so get ready for me to interject on virtually every point.
Which is perfectly fine, and I hope that makes the podcast great. So here's the first thing I want to say. With me saying that, I know just enough lore for this to really get me into trouble when I watch this movie.
All right.
A prime example is throughout this movie, they refer to the main character as Lothar the whole time. I was under the impression that was his first name, but it's actually Anduin Lothar. And so the thing is I play a lot of Hearthstone, and the character Anduin Wren is one of the heroes in Warcraft, which is actually the son of Lane Wren or Varian Wren. And Lane Wren is the king in this one. So I just got completely mixed up in this movie. The minute they said the Lane Ren referred to him as Anduin. I'm like, okay, what's going on here? I don't know what's going on now.
Well, Anduin Ren is named in Anduin Lothar's honor.
Yes, which I don't know. I didn't know that. so
wait, Anduin Lothar is a character from the game?
And no, Anduin Ren is the priest hero in Hearthstone. His father is Varian Ren, who's the little kid. He's the little boy that's the king's son.
Okay.
There's one scene where he goes, if there's one man I could trust to take care of this kingdom, it's him. Which I knew there was Warcraft people in there because they all laughed at that, and I had no idea why. That was funny. But but that's what they were just like, that's amusing. Apparently, Varian Ren is really badass. So I just didn't know. But I just wanted to put that out there.
So my god, I hate going after my fellow nerds, but I just had a nosebleed. Oh man.
I just wanted to throw that one quirk out there that's really just me just knowing just a little bit about the lore and just completely screwing me up on the whole thing. We're going to go ahead and start
now
with
I'm
you.
dumbfounded. All right.
No, let's do it. Come on. You're going first this time.
First of all, and I consider myself to be, try not to laugh at me, but above average intelligent movie goer.
Okay.
In that movies never confuse me.
That's fair.
Okay. I've seen too many of them.
Yeah.
That being said, the entire time I was watching this movie, I'm thinking majority of the public is just not going to know what the hell's going on because they gloss over so much in this film.
They do. I totally agree with you on that. There was a lot of stuff that I'm just like, well, why is that there? Or why is this here?
Okay.
So I don't disagree with you on that.
So, for example, they have this guy called the Guardian, who's named Medivh.
Yes.
Okay. For some reason, I'm thinking. Okay, it doesn't matter what I'm thinking, but he's a mage, right? Is that what he's supposed to be?
Yes.
Yes.
All right. What is the difference between Medivh and the boy, Kandahar? Or Khadgar.
Yes.
Like, what's that difference? Like, why does he hate that kid? And why does that kid come from a different, I don't know, clan or whatever the hell it is?
They mentioned Karen Tor, which I know very little about because of Mark explaining it to me. So they're the ones that are like in Dalaran or whatever. And
what does that mean?
Well, Dalaran's mentioned in the movie. But Dalaran's mentioned in the movie. He goes back to Dalaran and they're all, and he clearly is like, they show his character has basically, he ran away from everything.
Right. Yes.
And so you explain that, and but the thing is they don't explain to you who the Karen Tor are. Like, they don't explain who they are. You just know that they're there and they're in Dalaran.
Great. Okay. First of all, I think they went like an hour into the movie before mentioning that the kingdom or whatever was called Azeroth.
Yes, they did wait a while.
That probably should have been like the first thing. Like there's no like little summary, and now I'm still stuck on the difference between what is Medivh and what is Khadgar.
The only thing I can think of is that Khadgar, let's just say that,
oh my goodness,
he's the guardian, so he's probably the most powerful one, and then Khadgar is, But
why is he alone in some town?
There's always one guardian.
Yes.
Okay.
And when he's no longer there, another guardian will be chosen.
God damn it.
Which would be nice had they told you that in the movie.
Agree.
They did not. There's a lot of stuff like that in this movie.
Where I infer that, right?
Yes.
Like that's what I gather, but it's never said. And I can see a lot of people just like, seeing, well, what the hell is this guy?
Yes.
Because it isn't, and like, so here's my other thing, and this is really my big issue with the movie, because I actually liked it quite a bit. But if that's the case, why isn't the story about that?
Here's the problem. You could make a trilogy of movies explaining all the stuff you'd need to know that took place before the events of this movie, and you still wouldn't get all the details in.
Well, okay, but what if it's something small? So, like, for example, to me, they have all these little B plots that I think are much more relatable if you're going to introduce a world. You have a kid who ran away from his school, or whatever the case is. You know, I think like that could be relatable. You've got a baby. Now I'm really skipping ahead, but you've got a baby orc who's going to be raised by humans. That to me is an amazing story. Yeah. That I really want to see.
Yep.
I would love to have seen it from that perspective. You also have a halfling, this Garona character. It just seems like point of view. You know, if you're looking at it from how rich this can be, and that, you know, I feel that it is. There's like a million different starting points that they could have started with to introduce a character who's going along with the audience. Yeah. Who's like experiencing this all for the first time. And to me, they just jump around everywhere. Yes. Whereas like a kid who's just starting to learn magic, you know, going off on his own, that would be cool to see things from his perspective, to find out about the world.
That's a good point. I think that would have been really cool if they would have kind of based it off of maybe Khadgar the whole time and started with him and then have him go through all this. That might have been interesting. But I mean, for the point of view standpoint.
But I mean, okay, so I don't mean to, you know, I just think it's a little bit difficult, because I think Mark's got a good point, you know. But when I look at this idea and I see everything that they could do with this, all the different directions, this to me is like a 6 or 7 movie kind of thing. Like, why not do a bunch of Warcraft movies?
Well, they should. I mean, the thing is I think the thing that people don't realize is how massive the Warcraft lore is. It's ridiculous.
Well, and
it's like people are saying, well, people will say something about how it's as extensive as Lord of the Rings. I think it's more so. I think it's significantly more so.
It's gotta be more so.
And so it's one of those things where it's like it's a massive story. You could do like 12 movies easily. You could easily do that with this story.
And I think what's really helpful is, look, in the end, and I'm not saying this movie doesn't have its shortcomings with the storytelling, but if this movie leaves you, like you say, wanting to know more of some of that other stuff, then that's part of the good job, because there's so many stories you could tell, and they're out there in various forms, whether you're playing the game or reading books or, you know, in all the various media this franchise can present itself.
Yeah.
But I don't think you can squeeze it all, and I agree. There's things where we should have spent a little more attention so that newer people to the story aren't as confused on certain points.
Yeah.
But I think regardless of what they say, you're gonna walk away with questions, or at least the desire to know more.
Which I like. I actually like that, because, you know, and that was sort of the same thing with them, I think, rebooting Star Wars the way that they did. I mean, and if you're going to compare something to like the greatest trilogy of all time, the greatest series of movies of all time, I think it's a really good starting point to look at the adventure that Luke Skywalker went on. Yes. And think about that, because if you look at the end of this movie, where all the kingdoms are there for that funeral for King Lane, you know, King Lane goes out fighting, and he goes out, and he just didn't, to me, seem like that character. So I was so impressed with the way that his story came to an end, and now I'm kind of jumping around a bit. But the fact that you see all these different races who weren't even involved at all in what happened makes me think, God, this is incredible. This is just an incredible world that they have.
It is.
So I really think they really needed to start from one point of view and build out.
I definitely agree with you on
just
that
to
one.
introduce everyone.
Well, yeah, to get everybody acclimated with the world
Correct.
and the characters. Yeah. Yes, I understand that. And I totally agree with that. It seems like to me that when they did this movie, I think they tried to include people who haven't been a part of the series, but I think they didn't quite tell it enough. So it's almost like they were attempting to, but they kind of made an assumption that you knew a little bit beforehand. So it's almost like the movie is made more for the fans than it is for new people coming in, which is unfortunate because it's such a rich environment and such a rich story, and I want everybody to join in and enjoy it because it's massive and it's just a great story. I mean, I've had long conversations with Mark about about the entire world, and it's like ridiculous. I was like, it's so massive. The lore is crazy, and then they make sure that even when people are writing novels and books and stuff for this, everything's is what's the word for that? Help me out here.
Or like intertwined?
Episodic?
Well, it's related to the rest of the story.
Okay.
It starts with a C, right? What the heck?
Canon?
Canon. Everything's canon.
All right.
To the story. It's not like it's not like the Star Wars expanded universe where, everybody thinks it's canon, but it's not.
Well,
this is canon. So that's just my point about that.
Like Boba Fett living.
Yes.
Non-canon.
Yes. And to be fair, there's absolute blatant differences between the story this movie was telling and how it played out in the canon of the games or previous existing lore.
Yes. Which I also understand, because when I was done watching the movie, I actually had to go research and see some of this stuff, because I was so confused that there were some things I had to go back and look at. One of the prime examples is, I really didn't understand, and I'm assuming this might come up later, but I really didn't understand why Medivh all of a sudden turned into a full-on demon. I'm like, what?
Yeah.
What's that? I don't know what's going on here.
I'm glad it was in there. I was disappointed that they really didn't get. I mean, there were hints throughout the movie something's up with him.
Yes,
clearly. Yeah. But they made no effort whatsoever to try and explain it.
Yeah, and so that confused the heck out of me. And so I actually went back and learned about it and how he's kind of like a Titan or whatever, but he's like well, you explain it.
Medivh, from his conception, essentially, has been possessed by essentially the big bad of the universe.
Okay.
If you go to the highest, level of beings in existence, the Titans, one of them, Sargeras, was driven mad by the chaos, which his job in the universe was to control the chaos, the demons, and all this other stuff. He realized it was a futile thing, was driven mad and corrupted by all that evil. He's the one that pulls together the Burning Legion, which is essentially a giant army of demons and chaos and whatnot. He's the one that, and the Burning Legion is who tricks the Orcs and Gul'dan into the fell energy, what makes them green and all that, and the eventual destruction of their world.
Yes.
So he's not only manipulating this whole other planet and all the creatures there, trying to build his forces, he's also corrupting the Guardian, Medivh, and he's the one essentially mind controlling him to work in secret with Gul'dan to open the portals and bring in that invading force.
Yes.
None of that's explained.
No, none of it.
Oh my goodness.
And is it critical? But the thing is, I can't pretend to not know that stuff when I'm watching it. So I don't know how much of that detail is needed. He's possessed. It's essentially, and I'm guessing that's what manifests that demon form of his at the end.
Yes.
Inherently, Medivh as a person wants to do good, but he's not in control when these things are happening.
Yes.
He's literally, since conception, been possessed with this energy of this Sargeras, this guy that's essentially in control of everything bad that's happening.
Which is exactly the reason why I wanted to start with Ian, because he knows the least. Because I think you get the most subjective opinion on the movie from Ian than anybody else. And And I think that's a prime example of it's just not explained and you don't know what's going on and you're just like, okay, what's with that?
The assumption I took away from that character was that, because I felt the same thing, that obviously something was going wrong with him, but I didn't think he was being possessed. I actually thought that maybe because he's got that line where he says that he just wanted to protect everyone, I thought that maybe because he locked himself away and because he was alone, that maybe all this power started driving him insane. And I completely missed the fact that there could be something else there.
Yes.
And so, and I'm not sure if it's ever shown, but I think it would have been great if there was, even just a little, like another, like some sort of overt flash. I mean, I know he changes form, but I mean, was that the form of this other demon?
That's what my assumption is that's him.
There's only concept art of what he should look like.
I see.
He doesn't ever exist in the game.
It just seems like it would have been nice if that happened. I almost feel like it should have been almost like when he shows up in the demon form looking thing, I almost wish there was like a quick thing of dialogue or something that like explained that he's possessed with this other character, and that would have helped significantly, I think, with that whole sequence.
I mean, it could even have been something later on too,
Yeah, it's like I said, it's one of the problems with this movie is I think a lot of it is they really need to explain more than what they did for people who don't know what the what the lore is, and that is a big problem with this movie. Although like Ian, I did enjoy the movie also, so it's just kind of such a weird thing. What else you got, Jones? You got anything else?
Yeah. So a little weird thing, which I'm coming back around on, but Garona sips her tea like a proper lady.
Yes.
Pinky out, and I thought that was really weird. Like that kept bugging me. But then I'm thinking, if her dad's or if one of her parents is a halfling, or if one of her parents was human, I'm sorry, maybe she picked that up.
Well, the thing is,
it just doesn't seem like it's in her character to do that.
Yeah, and the thing is if you go and read about the lore, she isn't half human. So,
well, what is she?
She's half Draenei.
Those blue people that were in cages that had all their soul sucked out, she's supposed to be half of one of those. And I remember a bunch of people saying before this movie came out, oh no, in the movie she's half human. I got no sense of that whatsoever.
They didn't show whether she was half human or half Draenei.
And it couldn't possibly have been, because they haven't met humans before the portal.
Yes.
Well,
and she's around.
Well, but she speaks English, though. She speaks their language.
Well, she said she had learned that from one of the humans they had captured.
Yes.
Like some period of time must have occurred throughout this wasn't easy to pick up.
Well, again,
I'm going to stop my nosebleed now and pass it over to you guys.
It's a problem with this movie. And it's like I said, I had to go and look up everything. And the whole point of her character is she's half Draenei, and she looks surprisingly human. Like that's a part of the story,
right.
Her storyline. So it's one of those things where you wish you would have got a little more information about. But
in the game, well, not in the game, in the existing lore before this movie, she is half and half, but Gul'dan artificially ages her. Like, she doesn't have a normal life growing up. She goes from child to adult, and she is brainwashed. So most of the events that would have happened in this movie, the becoming friends with the humans and all that other stuff in King Lane, all took place, but he doesn't in the story say, please save yourself by killing me. Stormwind is under siege by the orcs, and all of a sudden Gul'dan's mind control takes over, and she just straight up assassinates him.
Nice.
And escapes. So she's not happy. She, Garona as her free will self isn't responsible, but it's very different how in the end in the movie, none of the humans know that. They still think he was assassinated in cold blood.
Yeah.
So it's just minor details, but also all that being mind controlled by Gul'dan, none of that existed in this movie.
Yes. It's more like she's just been like almost like a slave, like she's been a prisoner because she's like locked up the whole time, like through half the movie before she gets rescued or whatever. All right, so what else you got, Joe? You got anything else?
No, that's I'll concede here.
You concede, okay. Well, I guess we're gonna go ahead and get into my quirks now, and then we'll get into Mark here so that he can just lay it all on.
Okay.
Okay, so I said earlier, it's going to be pretty quick, because I said earlier one of the things that I didn't like was Khadgar as the actor. The actor was really poor in this movie.
Okay.
It's really unfortunate because he's a really huge part of this movie, and I feel like a lot of the other actors did a pretty good job, and he is just, to be such a huge part, it's like I can tell he's acting. It's like he's attempting to act. And that's really disappointing with him.
I agree.
He really didn't bother me.
I agree, man. Though. I think personally they messed up. I think that they could have done something different with that character and maybe gone with, I don't know, someone who wasn't white or wasn't a guy. And I would have been a lot happier with it. Like, to me, he seems so vanilla. Like, I was just like, oh man, this is. And the thing is that I wanted to see the story from his perspective, but that actor cannot possibly carry this movie.
No.
So it seems like, well, okay, it needs to be from this character Lothar's perspective, but they're just sort of jumping around.
Yeah.
Everywhere. I don't know. Personally, that wasn't the right. I don't think that was the right actor.
I don't think it was
movie.
too. I think the actor was the problem with
this, especially if we're going to have to see him again.
I don't think you will. He's not. He's a very critical role to this part of the story, but what happens moving forward, you're not going to see.
As in.
Well, when I was reading about the lore,
and put it this way, in the lore,
he's much older though, right?
You know, he's young. He is like the understudy.
Yeah. But
before Medivh's treachery is revealed and they essentially chop his head off, it's not quite so surrender yourself for the glory as the movie made it.
Okay.
Some of his life force is drained out of him, and he's artificially aged by Medivh. So he goes from young apprentice to very old looking man.
Okay.
So had they even done with that, you literally would have had a different actor.
You would have had a different actor. Okay. Because I was reading that afterwards I read the lore because I was trying to figure out who the heck this character was. And then all the photos I saw of him, it was when he was much older. And I'm like, well, that's clearly not the same thing. Right. So I guess that explains that then. All right.
So regardless which direction they go, you guys are golden.
Yeah, they'll have a different actor.
Right.
Although you might see him be aged. Maybe he just won't say anything. One of the other things I had for was I thought the visuals on the orcs were really good, but all of the mounts, like the animals, were not very good, and that kind of disappointed me quite a bit. Especially after we've seen a lot of the more recent movies with CG animals. They're just so great, and this one is very subpar, I'd have to say.
You talking about the griffin?
Yeah, like the griffin, and they also had the whatever that wolf. There's a couple of wolves,
the big wargs or wolves.
Yeah, there were those two. I really thought that there was a very strange scene in this movie that I did not understand at all, and it was that really awkward scene between Garona and Lothar. Do you remember that scene where it looked like they were about to kiss?
In the bar after his kid was killed?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was such an awkward scene. Am I the only one that thinks that was weird? I'm like, there was no connection between these two characters really at all throughout this movie, and then all of a sudden they're just really in tune with each other, and I thought that was just a really weird scene for me.
Well, I mean, I think it makes sense if you're going to tell the story about those two characters. Because think about how different it is with that ending.
Yeah.
With the movie ending the way that it does. If the movie was going to be about two characters, and let's just say it's those two.
Yeah.
And it isn't. I think it tries to be more than that.
Yes, it does.
Then it makes sense for her to feel sorry for him, and he's just confessed that he doesn't have anything in this world other than his son.
Yes,
which we know isn't true. I mean, he's got a brother and he's got a brother-in-law and a sister and a nephew who apparently is going to turn up to be a badass, but I wouldn't know that had we not had Mark here. So, like that kind of thing would make me excited. Like I would know if it was X-Men, I would know there would be no way they would pull something like that past me.
Yes.
But, I guess I didn't have an issue with that scene because I think it sets up the betrayal at the end of the movie.
I guess. I thought it was to me, it's just like it was it happened very quickly and it was just strange to me when I watched it.
It's just if the movie was told from a little bit of a different perspective, and those are the two characters that you're supposed to follow.
Well, at that point, it would have made more sense.
Right. Okay.
But that's not the case for this movie.
Okay, I agree. I'm just thinking to all the more conventional, to just years and years of watching movies and reading stories, to where that probably would have been the case.
Okay, so I have one more thing, and this is more of a quirk. I'm glad that they have this in there, but it's just kind of, it's a quirk, so I'm just kind of weird about it because not everybody's in on the joke. And there's a lot of fanfare for the fans in this movie, which is also is a good thing, but for people who aren't inside of it, it's just kind of a weird thing. Like the only reason I know about the polymorph scene I thought was awesome. And the only reason I know about that is because of Hearthstone. And then the thing is I love that he mentions, oh, well, it only lasts like a minute. And I'm like, oh, well, that's a direct quote for the game, basically. It's a direct, or it infers directly to the game. And so I thought that was just kind of a cool thing, but it is weird because not everybody's in on that joke. So it's just a weird kind of thing. And there's a lot of that in there. Like when I was talking about when Lane Wren left and he goes, if there's anybody I would entrust the kingdom to, it would be you, little Varian or whatever. And I don't know who the character is. I just know that the character itself, I've heard people talk about how awesome he is. And so, like Ian, you would have no clue that reference to that. He's basically saying that you're going to grow up to be something really important, but you don't know that with that reference. So it's stuff like that I thought are both good and bad to me. And that's all I have. So what about you, Mark? Let's hear Mark's.
Yes, please.
All right. So I think the bigger thing is I like the fact that they're trying to tell a story on both sides. This is not just the story of the Alliance, nor is it just the Horde. It clearly favors the human side a little bit more, but I just don't think, especially more so with Durotan and the Orcs, you just didn't get enough time to emotionally bond with him.
Yeah.
You get he's a good guy, he has the best of intentions, and he's not on par with where the other Orcs are going, but beyond that, it's all just very surface level story at that point. I also don't think story-wise we had enough time to know what the source of the Fel magic was. It's clearly something fairly new to the Orcs. We see they're all brown-skinned in the beginning, and then all of a sudden they come where all the other Orcs are, and now they're all green.
Yes.
And it's like, well, clearly they're aware that something's going on, but it's just so barely touched on. And the audience does get to see, clearly this Fel corruption is what turns them green.
Yeah. It's
shown enough, but we don't know why or how any of this came to be.
Yeah.
Whether that's, from my point of view, I know the answer. I just want to see it. I don't know if anyone who doesn't know this stuff is aware. And then the other thing that's really odd is, and I know I'm not the only one that's thought about it, is Garona gets captured, and she's in the back of this wagon, and she's being taken back to Stormwind. Please explain to me why on Earth she is allowed to essentially walk free in the throne room right in front of the king without being bound.
Right.
Yeah, okay.
Like, it just doesn't make a lot of sense. Clearly, there's a mutual trust that's established after, but it's like, maybe we should have established a little bit of that before you're unchained.
Yeah, okay.
Before your fancy tea drinking pinky out. Which I absolutely noticed the pinky while I was watching it, but then I stopped and thought, I'm like, well, maybe the cup's just too small. There's no room for a pinky there. And I thought the dwarves were a little too stocky and broad. Like, they just looked a little distorted.
Okay.
As far as anatomical, and that's more for knowing they still have to eventually introduce gnomes, which have to be even shorter and smaller.
Yes.
And I'm like, oh, maybe they've gone a little too extreme with this one.
That's understandable.
And they made Magni Bronzebeard bald on top, and he's not supposed to.
All stuff that only somebody who knows the world would know.
But, like, you know, they show Ironforge, and I'm like, no, that's straight up out of the game Ironforge.
Nice.
Establishing shot, there's a dwarf in the snow looking over the mountainside. It's all just tickled the right, you know, fancies.
All right, is that all your quirks thing?
Yeah, I'll save the rest for likes.
Okay, so let's go ahead and get into the likes. We'll go ahead and start with mine. I have to say that the visuals on the orcs are just awesome. I loved it through the whole movie. And I like that they all looked so different from each other. Just when you look at some of the background shots, they all look different, and that's really impressive. That means somebody spent a lot of time, or they created a damn create a character.
They did. I'm sure they did.
Right? Yeah. They must have did a create a character thing, and because they all look a lot different. Like they're clearly different people, and that's just such a great thing. And yeah, that's what I would assume that they would have done.
Especially, like, one joke I had, especially when it was just trailers that I was basing it on, is like, you're right, they all look very different, but did no one tell these people during character creation there's different shades of green you could have picked? Nope. They're all the same shade of green.
That's just how it has to be.
Yeah. I think by the time I saw the movie, there actually is a little more variation in there than I thought, but I love the fact that there are orcs in the background that do not say a word throughout the entire movie, and I know who they are in the story.
Oh, because really?
They looked correct.
Are you kidding me?
Like, for instance, the...
You've got to be kidding me.
Oh, wow.
No, Grom Hellscream.
Okay.
The namesake for my little chihuahua over there.
Yeah.
He's, you know, in the scene where Black Hand was essentially putting his hand in the fire and Duratan chops it off?
Yes.
There's an orc just in the background standing between Duratan and Orgrim, and that's Grom Hellscream. And he shows up quite a bit. You see him at the end battle.
God, that's really
quite
impressive.
A few shots. Just a couple other of their war chiefs where they've clearly established there's tribes amongst the orcs, and their leaders are all fairly well known. One of the very first orcs that comes out of the portal when it opens at the end for that final battle.
Yeah.
He's got a big... He's replaced his one hand with a big blade.
Okay.
And so that's Kargath Blade Fist.
Nice.
And just little stuff like that. I'm like, oh, that's freaking awesome.
Wow, I can't believe
that they're there.
That. That's really impressive that they did that.
And these are characters that for now aren't very important to the story. But if we get part 2, part 3, and this story evolves, are crucial characters that will come in. So I just like that it's establishing they might be there later.
All right. The other like that I have is I want to see more orc fight. I absolutely love Duratan and Gul'dan going at it. I just freaking love that scene. It wasn't very long, but like something about the way that was like filmed and choreographed, I just loved. I was sitting there and I'm like, there needs to be more of this. I need to see more of this.
That was one of my likes too. Like I thought it was such a rare thing to see, you know, for starters, because Duratan is smaller, than Gul'dan, and you know, he loses that fight and dies, which I was really disappointed about.
Yeah, that's unfortunate.
But I thought it was kind of a unique thing to happen, because you'd almost expect for him to win or at the end of the movie to come back and challenge him again.
Yeah.
And that doesn't happen. And that's sort of what I was thinking as the fight went on, and then he had a pretty terrible death, which I was I was disappointed to see because I really like that character, and that's the first character you see at the start of the movie.
Yes.
Right.
The other thing I have to say is I really enjoyed Gul'dan as a character through this movie. I one of my favorite scenes in the movie is when he's sitting there on like this throne and he's slowly sucking the life out of this human. It's like, it tells you a lot about that character, that scene, and him interacting. And it's just like, wow, I love this character. He is clearly, like, he is like off his rocker a little bit, and he's just, I just love how he's just slowly torturing this guy while he's sitting there casually having a conversation. That was such a great scene, and easily one of my favorite scenes in the movie. I just loved it. The last thing I have to say is I actually really enjoyed the environments and the sets. To me, because Mark's got me playing World of Warcraft, there's a lot of scenes that just feels like World of Warcraft. It feels the right way. And I think that that's something that is definitely valid for me to go ahead and say, because it definitely feels like the games, and I thought that was just I thought they did a very good job with that. And that's all my likes.
Yeah, like that sequence where they're just establishing the path of terror that the orcs have been doing, and you got that bird's eye view that's just zooming from village to village.
Yeah.
All those are real places in the game.
Wow.
In order of how they were flying over. I mean, everything was clearly grander in scale in the movie, but straight up, like, based off the layouts of towns and all this other stuff. And if you go to Stormwind in the game, it's like, nope, you can see from some of those distance shots where Khadgar lands when he takes the flight path essentially to Stormwind. I'm like, nope, that's right where you would land in the game. And there's the Dwarven district, and there's the market, and there's the big chapel, and it was very, very faithful. It's
so unfortunate that there was so many things that was faithful to the story that people just don't get because they're not aware of it. It's really unfortunate because I think this movie does that really well. And so it's really unfortunate that that's the case, but it is what it is. All right, so I guess we got to go for Ian's Lex here.
Yeah. Okay. I really liked that. I liked that there were seemingly some good orcs. It seems like maybe they got eliminated. There was that one who survived at the end, but I thought there was some nice balance between the fact that these guys are trying to survive, but obviously they're a serious issue.
Yeah.
I really liked the little plot twist that Gul'dan's magic was already starting to kill the world.
Yeah.
And so for the orcs, because there's already so many of them, that this is going to be a continuing problem. Like, it doesn't get resolved. I think that's a really brave thing to do for a movie like this, because I could see a lot of moviegoers not liking how this thing ends. It doesn't end the way that you think maybe it should.
Yeah.
And it does imply that there are going to be more films, and I would be disappointed if it doesn't do well enough to get the sequel. It seems like I think this needs as much money as it can to straighten things out for the next movie. But I really like the orcs a lot better than the humans, and I think it probably focuses more on the humans than anything else.
Yeah.
So I was disappointed when Durotan and his wife passed away, but I think that maybe there's a larger story to tell, and so I'd be interested in seeing that. I really liked how they portrayed magic in this movie.
That was a really cool effect.
It would have been cool, I think, to dive deeper into that. Because like he throws the sheep spell, and I mean that's something I know.
Yeah, that's in Hearthstone.
That's that one card you don't want to. You don't want to put that.
Yeah,
you don't want to put out something good when you know that 2 of those are still burning.
I absolutely hate when I'm playing against a mage and my Tyrion Ford ring turns into a freaking sheep.
Oh, it's great though, isn't it?
For all those Hearthstone players that are listening to this, terrible.
Yep.
I kind of liked the fact that when they did Medivh's character, that he creates like this, I don't know, lightning storm, which is almost like a taunt.
Nice.
Because no one can get past it, right?
Nice.
But it traps his son on the other side, and I just remember thinking, this is like, all this is good, all this is great to me, if but I almost felt like I didn't care whether or not his son lived or died, because they just didn't set it up.
They
correctly.
did not set it up. And you know what? The other thing that bothers me about that scene in particular is you don't see him get stabbed. You hear the sound and then it cuts to him leaning over because he just got stabbed. It's like, I almost want to get more, like, to me, I think this is a director problem. And it seems like you want to see the stab happen and then have the reaction from the kid's face that what just happened. And then he kind of is leaning over. And then you cut to his father. Like, that would have made more sense. But that's not how it is. It's like, you get the stab sound and then the kid's just leaning over. So you don't get, like, the dramatic reaction of the kid realizing he's dead. He's about to die. And I thought that was really unfortunate. But I think that's just a weird little director problem.
I think that's it for me as far as likes. I mean, there were, we've kind of discussed them
All right,
bit as
well,
we've gone.
Let's do Mark. Mark, what do you got?
All right. So as you sort of alluded to earlier, there are non-story related Easter eggs scattered throughout this movie.
Yeah.
A lot of them, just from seeing pre-production photos, I knew were there that you hardly see. Like, I don't know if it should matter that the inn that Lothar was drunk in is exactly laid out like the in-game bar in Stormwind. Like,
so
little
crazy.
things like that. But little things like, you see a Murloc fishing in the little river as they're riding over a bridge. Which,
I remember
You know
that.
what?
I was like,
Yes.
I love Murlocs.
Oh, I missed
I
that.
remember that. Oh,
I
you're
didn't
right.
put it together.
And it's doing its little, classic sound, and it's
It almost
just there.
sounds exactly like the one from Hearthstone.
Oh, it is. It's straight out of the game.
I thought it was so great. I was like, oh, no way. That is a really cool scene. Which, again, is one of those things that's unfortunate because only people who have known this world would even know what the heck that is. Otherwise,
Right.
people are like, that's weird. What was that thing?
Like, when they're riding through when they're riding in the forest, and before they get ambushed by orcs for the first time,
Mm-hmm.
and you can hear, like, what sounds like hyenas laughing in the background.
Mm-hmm.
But that's all gnolls.
Okay.
So that's a race of, like Cogger. There's these hyena humanoid creatures, and no one cares whether they show up or not. It's not important to the story. But players of the game know that gnolls exist, just like Murlocs do, in that forest. And so you're hearing them.
That's great.
There's a summoning stone that I don't even know if you would have noticed, but as they're riding through, I think it's at night, on the way to Goldshire to meet the king for the first time, there's this big monolith rock with like a glowing emblem on it.
I definitely remember seeing that.
Okay, that's a summoning stone. There's one outside every dungeon that you use to summon the other members of your party so you can all go into the dungeon together.
Oh, it's so crazy.
And then, as you mentioned, the polymorph. And so there's just little examples like that throughout that are just entertaining. But one thing that I thought was hilarious, and it didn't dawn on me during the watching of it, it sort of came to me later, and then I mentioned it to Bridget, and she thought it was hilarious and awesome if that was right. But during that final showdown with Khadgar and Medivh, Khadgar slowly like resisting the fell energy, and then all of a sudden he gets bathed in this golden light, is fully restored, and then wins the fight. I think he leveled up.
Oh, that's awesome.
When you earn enough experience and you level up, you get bathed in golden light.
Bathed in golden light.
I think he leveled up and then he won.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I thought that was just epic. And as you said, like, these orcs look amazing. They're very expressive. Yep. And then a lot of people will naturally compare this to maybe a more realistic, grotesque version of orcs that, like, they look in Lord of the Rings.
Yes.
And, I never thought they'd go that way, but I'm glad they didn't. There is a more cartoony aspect to how these guys look, but I don't care. More, like everything else I just said, their look being somewhat authentic to the look of the game just brings me that much more into it.
Yeah.
I'm glad they didn't say, well, we need something more realistic and that's too fake. I thought they looked incredible. And Thrall was just awesome. Or Goel, excuse me. The little baby orc that gets sent down the river.
The baby orc.
Yeah.
All right.
Big things in that kid's future.
So is that going to be one of the cool characters that we're gonna get?
So in the realm of the games, let's say this movie is the story of Warcraft 1, where the orcs essentially win the war. I know it seems like a victory and it's brought the alliance together, but essentially during the first war, the orcs win. And then the second war, which may be a sequel, the tides turn essentially. And then come Warcraft 3, that's when players of the game would be introduced to Thrall as a grown-up.
Okay.
The specifics of the story all take place essentially in books and outside the game, or you learn later.
So Thrall, isn't that one of the heroes?
In Hearthstone?
Yeah, he's the shaman.
He's the shaman.
Ah.
Yeah.
Thrall is the name given to him by the humans, even though Goel was the name given to him by his parents.
Dang it.
But he never realizes that, and he doesn't, let's just say he doesn't live a good life being brought up by humans. So he eventually liberates himself and his people when they're in a really bad state. 30 years from now, or however long it's supposed to be. in movie timeline.
Jeez, I hope the few people that are listening to this podcast
that get it,
realize that this needs more, and that it's like the story is like, a lot of people are going to compare this to Lord of the Rings, like you were saying, and like I was saying earlier, but this is way more massive. It's way more in depth, and I really want to see more of it continuing forward. And so I hope that just you explaining all these things just shows you how amazing this story is, and amazing this war or this lore is, and how important it is to really, I think people need to know these stories, and that's how I feel about this. I mean, I just thought it was great.
And a lot of people say, like, Thrall is he's like the Superman of the story. He's always going to come up with the ability to save the day in the end, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And they always refer to Thrall as Green Jesus. Green Jesus will just come and save the day. But we all saw Draka puts him in the little carrier and sends him down the river.
Yeah.
So he's Green Moses.
Yes.
And he's going to come free his people.
Yep. He's basically Moses.
Yeah.
All right. Is anything else?
No, that sums up the most.
All right. Let's go ahead and rate it. I'm just going to reiterate that this movie has its problems and just storytelling problems, because they kind of throw you in the middle of the world and you wish that they explained a little bit more. And after talking to you guys, originally I was going to say rent it, but I really want people to go ahead and see this so that we can get more of this story, because I think it needs to be seen so that we can get something even more in depth in the next one. So I'm going to go ahead and say see it.
All right. Well, I did enjoy the movie personally. I thought it just had too many issues, and I'm going to say that the majority of people are out there, I think, are just not going to figure it out. So I'm going to say rent it.
All right.
And for me, had a lot of fun. I think if it inspires anyone after seeing it to go learn more, like Graham said, then any return viewing is you're just gonna like it more. There's only more to appreciate, I think, the more in depth you get. Hopefully, what's been put on screen is enough to get people to that point. So for me, play it.
Nice.
Play it. Dang it! I'm gonna have to come up with a new graphic, son of a bitch. All right, that's a new one.
That's fantastic. All right, this podcast has gone way too long. Yeah. So, if anybody wants to contact us, you can always do that via our home on the web, halfpastpodcast.com.
You don't have a recording of this? Like us on Facebook.
Nope, I don't. Rate us on iTunes and on Google Play.
We're on Stitcher and Libsyn.
Email us at halfpastcast@gmail.com. That's halfpastcast@gmail.com.
Tweet us at halfpastpodcast.
Thank you for listening and thank you for your support. Next week we will have Finding Dory. It's not going to win an Academy Award.
Is that what we have to watch next week?
Yes.
I so don't want to see that. All right, let's do it.
Wow. Really?
I don't. I'm sorry. Thank you, Lassiter, for sticking us in sequel hell. Thank you for joining us, Mark.
Thanks,
Absolutely.
Mark.
Always happy to be here, guys.
Offering some sage guidance through this podcast, because it probably would have been a lot different.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Happy to help.
Thanks, Mark. This is the Half Past Podcast. I'm Graham Ricks.
For the Horde.
Oh, you stole mine! You bastard! You bastard! I was gonna say
sign
that.
Out.
No.
Podcast over.
I was gonna say
Podcast
that.
over.
Not fair. You don't even play the game.
Podcast
you son
over.
of a bitch.
This podcast is over. Stop listening right now.
I cannot
Last
believe
word, bitch.
You said for the Horde. I was so gonna say that.
All right. Job's done.
That's awesome. You jerk.
Job's done.
Awesome.
Nope, this podcast is over.
I guess I'm just gonna go ahead and end with something crappier. For the Alliance.
Ooh.
That doesn't work.
For Doomhammer.
Oh, that's awesome. See you next week.
See ya.